medical research and clinical research is very much driven today from United States and Europe. But there are quite big differences in how the system works. This is, of course, I think both good and bad, because you can learn from each other and how things are done. In my field, in Europe, we have GDPR, which is to protect people from data about themselves. And this turns out to be somewhat of a problem for these diagnostic tests that I talk about. Because even if the patient has given written consent, the tests are now so exquisite that you can actually identify the patient afterwards, which means that you're sort of moving into an area where even if the sample is anonymized, you can still sort of identify the patient, and therefore you're under the GDPR, and then you cannot do the test. So this is something that we would like to try to avoid in the future, so it's not a problem, because all these patients, they donate their blood and so on in order to help other people. That's so of course we would like to continue with that. So right now the way it works is that we cannot publish data on individual patients. We have to do it on more or less a population basis. This is okay for us, but in order for other people to use our data, it would be better to have individual data instead of population data. So we're kind of stuck right now that we, in order to help other people or other researchers. So this is a problem that we just have to discuss, and there will be. This is something that the lawyers talk about a lot at the different universities. So I think that there hopefully will be sort of some sort of resolution for this, because there's only losers right now. So obviously we want to go to a system where we are all winners instead. Yeah.
Again, when it comes to patient, they prefer to have. They want to take share of the science.
Yes.
And instead of.
Well, I would say that the patients that I meet, I'm not a doctor, but the patients that we meet, they are very devoted, if they have a disease, to help others when they and it's not really, it's kind of altruistic actually, that they want to help for the future, and it's not really because they want to be helped themselves, because that's probably not going to happen. So this is what we would like to do also, and we would like to move forward with this altruistic thinking.
Yeah. So important steps ahead. Do you agree about this?
I think these are fantastic points and very important. And I would just say from the U.S. perspective that a lot of research, especially in rare diseases or so-called orphan diseases that affect small numbers of people, it's often the patient advocacy groups, these self-forming groups of patients and their families that drive a lot of the fundraising and awareness that these diseases even exist and should be targeted for additional research. The common diseases that affect the most people obviously get the most attention and the most funding, but these rare diseases are very important to study. With respect to the privacy issue, there's going to be some conflict with that, because ultimately you'd like to compare, say, genetic information or proteomics information to the metadata, the clinical metadata about that patient's condition. And even if you say, if you remove the name of that patient or the volunteer in a clinical study, if you have the genome and the proteome, then that is the ultimate fingerprint of that person. And in the European system, I think there are some advantages, because people are guaranteed in most countries medical care independent of a pre-existing condition. In the United States, in some cases, you have to get commercial health insurance to provide medical care, and there are some limitations on whether the insurance company will cover you if you have a pre-existing condition. And the United States Congress actually has made laws to guarantee that even people with pre-existing conditions can get health insurance, which is very important to make this work, where people can actually feel free to participate in some of these research trials without worrying that their diagnosis might be revealed in some way that would affect them or their families personally. So that's important.
And this is of course interesting. I said that there are pros and cons with the European and United States system, and here you have exactly a con for the United States, where you have this possibility that you find out about a disease before you have it, and then you can't get an insurance. While in Europe, of course, you have a sort of state-funded insurance and health system, and therefore it doesn't really matter. But then in Europe, you have a GDPR, which is really strict on integrity of data, which is fine in some ways, but I think it's not working perfectly for this field, actually.